Boxers are not known for saying profound things. But Joe Frazier, a world heavyweight boxing champion, once said that we are all at some point in our lives like the blind man standing in a corner, waiting for somebody to hold their hand and lead them across. We are all, in one aspect or another, a work in progress. I have often talked about my mother, like every sensible son should. But right now, I'm going to talk about my father. Now that's a subject I approach like working out my salvation with fear and trembling. Now if I was to summarize, if I was to talk about my father, we'd be here all night. He's a type of man who would constantly Google 10 legal ways to kill your children. Just so we, his kids, could find that on his search history and know that he's not messing around. He was a disciplined master in the home. He was Professor Magoha on steroids. And we, the poor children, were like Arsenal Football Club. We somehow found a way to be beaten every other time. That was one side of him. He had another side. He was not the type to tell us, I love you, son. I grew up in Africa. But I remember this particular instance. See, as a young boy growing up, and unlike Bobby Black, my growing up did not go too far. I have my shortcomings. I am work in progress. But I had this obsession with being in the army. Thanks to watching too much Sylvester Stallone, aka Rambo. And I went to my father and I told him, sir, I want to join the army after Form 4. And he thought it was a good idea. Largely because that meant he was not going to find money to pay for my college fee. The government would take care of it. I'm from Central Kenya. And soon, the government put out an advertisement calling for able-bodied men and women to show up in the designated locations to try out for selection. And my father and I, in our wisdom, we decided we are going to try it out in Kirinyaga, my home county. We figured there would be less competition. And on the material day, we went to Kirinyaga and we got the venue. The first challenge that I faced was at the registration desk. When I produced my certificate, and turns out I had the best grade of all the guys who had showed up that morning for selection. And the officer told me, son, we are sorry, you're overqualified. But I told them, I know. But I promise I will only use half of my abilities. And they let me through. And I went through all the tests that they go through. I did 10 laps. I did medical checkups. And there was only one test remaining, standing between me and my dream of being, you know where, in the army. One last dental checkup. Now, I had survived the first one. And I say survived because I had lost a tooth in high school, in a fight. A fight with nice biscuits. Remember those? And in its place, I had a denture. And you know you cannot get into the army if you don't have a tooth. I was trying to beat the system. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to report that the system beat me. The second guy to do a dental checkup, he picked it out. He touched it, and it fell off. Murphy's Law. And with it went down my dream of being in the army. I was so heartbroken and so disappointed. I went to a corner of that stadium, and I cried my heart out. And while I was crying, a man came, sat next to me, and wrapped his hands around my shoulders, and he cried with me. That man was my father. Then he said, "Son, no matter what happens, I am your father, and I will always have your back." He was cognizant of the fact that we are all work in progress. And at one point or another, you will need someone to have your back. I have since left his house, and in the course of time, I've had friends turned brothers who have had my back in good times and in bad times, in season and out of season. In fact, I think when I die in my funeral, I want them to be the pallbearers so that they can let me down at least once in their lifetime. But in spite of their unwavering loyalty, I still felt that something was missing. I could not put my finger to it, but I felt something was missing. But this was until I met a girl. I was in the church parking lot, minding my own business, when this devastatingly beautiful descendant of Eve waltzed past me. Now, some of you ask, why is a woman called a woman? Let me educate you. When Adam woke up from his slumber and saw Eve, he went like, whoa, man. I had the same reaction. And then she did something magical. About 5 meters away, she looked over her shoulder, as though to say, come, baby. And she had this smile that could set a forest on fire. And she set me on fire. And who am I to say no to such an invitation? I followed her into the church, from a distance, of course, to avoid being creepy. And I sat right behind her, in the pew right behind her, strategically. Just in case the conversation goes south, I will make a speedy exit with minimal embarrassment. And ladies and gentlemen, what was meant to be a small talk ended up being a 4-hour-long conversation. And by the time we were done, I was sold hook, line. Not only was she beautiful, but she was smart. She had a sense of humor. She laughed at my jokes and continued laughing at my jokes. What more could a man ask for? And I spent the next 3 years chasing after her until she caught me. And ladies and gentlemen, this girl has turned me into a master politician. I have promised her anything and everything, some of which only God can provide. And one day, we were having a conversation, and she asked me, Chris, what makes you so different from other men that I should accept you? And I told her, that's easy. And like other men, I oil my legs. Ladies and gentlemen, this girl has brought nothing but happiness to my life. Yeah, she's in here. She's right here. She's Abigail. She's all that. Plus a bag of chips. And honestly, I love her to bits. But I am a work in progress. And in spite of all that, I honestly am tired of calling her my girlfriend. Abigail, there are many ways to find happiness in this life, but all I really need is you. Will you marry me?
Mwanzo asubuhi, sura yako nionayo, jioni jua likitua, wajua na kuwaza. Asubuhi jua likiangaa, pendo letu lang'aa.